Hey, I'm Tim from Circuitous Effects, and you're watching Defining Circuits. Defining Circuit is a periodic interview series where I chat with fellow creators in the music world about what inspired and defined their passion for building. The moments, ideas, experiences, and even the circuit that sparked their drive to create for musicians. So I'm here today with Jambu, who's from Lefty Pedals. Jambu, thanks for being here today. And I was wondering if we could start by maybe just telling us who you are, what you do, and how you got into this whole world of pedal building.
Yeah, so my name is Jambu. I'm from Lefty Pedals. I build custom pedals for people on the internet and Instagram. I started about 7 years ago in about 2018 building pedals. I first started with a kit out of a online magazine that's
Cool.
called Distortion LTD that's no longer in publishing. But that was basically a JCM 800 amp in a box. It was way more complicated than I could ever build for a first pedal, but I didn't know what I was doing. I had to drill the Vero board myself, the holes and
Oh,
everything
wow.
on it. So that was a real challenge, drilling the metal. I got it to eventually make noise at some point, but it never quite came together. So I ended up moving to something simpler, to a one knob fuzz, which if you've ever built one's about 7 components. And so that was a much simpler thing that I finally got to work for my first pedal. And that was kind of the aha moment where after a couple tries, you're like, I got to be able to get this to work and make it make some noise. And
Right, right,
once it
right.
starts making noise, it's a very exciting moment in your pedal building experience.
So before that moment, I guess before the JCM 800 thing, I mean, were you just you were like playing guitar, using other pedals, and what sort of made you kind of say, "Hey, I'd like to try to build this thing," or even as you saw that online magazine, say, "Well, that looks like it might be something I can do."
Yeah, it was really an economics issue for me. Like I love pedals. I already had maybe a dozen, 2 dozen effects pedals for guitar and bass. I was really into them and into exploring them, but the cost of some of the
Yeah,
pedals were upwards of $200 or $300 for like a fuzz factory.
yeah, right.
I'm like, that's a lot of money for a pedal or a king of tone even. And so I learned that you could just make these yourself for fractions on the dollar, and learning electrical engineering in the process. And so I said, well, hey, let's start figuring around how to do this for a cheaper way. And I can get a lot more pedals for myself than buying them at a couple $100 a pop. And
Yeah,
the rest
yeah.
is history
No,
from
that's
that.
great. So okay, so the first pedal didn't quite work out. You go into the one knob fuzz. Like take me through maybe your emotional process of like something being really difficult not working and then getting into something that you got working. What was that like?
Yeah, it's just the highs and lows of building pedals, I guess. When you get the circuit to work, there's nothing greater feeling than hearing the noise. And when you hit the switch and it comes on and it makes what it's supposed to do effects wise, that's always the best feeling. And the worst feeling is when you hit the button and nothing happens, utter silence. So just learning to tweak that. And then if you've ever built pedals, you know what an audio probe is to be able to test the circuit. And
Mhm.
so starting with something really simple with 7 components is a lot easier than an entire, like JCM 800 amp in a box pedal or something
Yeah,
that has
yeah.
6 potentiometers on it and a bunch of other stuff. So just starting out something really simple and just really learning how that circuit works, going from the transistor to the capacitors through the resistors and from the input to the output, and just learning how to trace that signal really taught me a lot about the pedal process and how to troubleshoot it.
That's great. Yeah. So the audio probe, did you build your first one or did you buy one or
Yeah, I built it myself. I just Googled how to build an audio probe. I
yeah.
actually took an empty marijuana joint container and used that as the case, stuck a nail through the bottom of it and wired it up and put a
Yep.
little resistor in there, and the rest is history. So
That's great. That's great. Yeah, that tool is one that I think is very seldom spoken about when you talk to people about getting into pedal building. But then you realize really soon, right, that man, I need something that lets me know where this signal's going, and it's invaluable,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So as you were building, as you were getting into this stuff, is there any particular circuit or pedal that you made that you kind of said, now I know what I'm doing. This is what I want to do in my spare time, or as a maybe a potential business or something like that.
I guess there's nothing in particular. There's no one specific pedal. After learning to build like distortions and fuzzes and boosts and overdrives, I realized that kind of that market was oversaturated. And so I wanted to kind of move into other modulation type effects like delays and phasers and
Mm,
reverbs and things like that. And so typically I veer towards more modulation effects that I like to build. In particular, like I said, I have kind of zero background in electrical engineering. So I always liken pedal building to paint by numbers, where literally you're taking a map that shows you where each circuit's supposed to go and soldering that to the board. And then if you do it right, it's going to work. And if you don't do it right, it may or may not work, or it might
yep.
sound different than it's supposed to. So that's kind of been my approach to building things. Obviously, sometimes I get it over my head with something that's too complicated of a pedal and I can't get it to work. And that's really frustrating
Oh, yeah.
because I don't know how to fix it sometimes. But
Yeah.
yeah, I just do what I can and, just keep trying and keep getting back to it if you fail and not to give up on it.
That's cool. So, do you ever get into the breadboarding process of doing some prototyping before you get into the pedal building, or do you go straight to the like the Vero or the tag board or whatever it might be?
Yeah, typically I'm just using PCBs from Pedal PCB. That
Okay.
guy has hundreds of
Yeah.
PCBs that are all really quality copies of clones, and so whatever the customer wants, I just will try to find that for them and get them something that's specific. I'm one who kind of lets the customer lead me in what they want versus building something and saying, "Hey, do you want to buy this?" and just sending it out in the open. So I'm always looking for what people want in some specific type, especially a combo pedal where it's like it might be a fuzz with a delay on it, or a fuzz and a reverb, or
Yeah.
two types of modulation put together in a combo pedal. Or I've even made one called a triple play where it was a distortion, a fuzz, and a reverb, I think, or a delay or something with
That's yeah. That
sliders
sounds
on it.
that sounds
So
cool. That's
yeah.
awesome. Have you ever, for your own sort of edification, I guess, chased any sort of tone or type of combination that you just wanted for yourself?
Yeah, I guess one of the first pedals I built really early on, like I said earlier, was a Fuzz Factory. I really love that like Velcro grip
Mm,
fuzz sound of the Fuzz Factory, and how the stability control really gives it that Velcro feel and touch to it tone wise, where it just really rips when you're moving up and down the neck on it.
mm,
So I was really happy to build that in a pedal that I even made the knobs and everything look like a ZVEX pedal.
that's
So
cool. Yeah.
I was really excited when I got that built.
That's great. Is there anything that maybe you've, I guess, struggled to learn as you were building, and maybe are still struggling with, that you hope one day to kind of like just have a complete grasp on, and say, I know what's happening here.
Yeah, and that goes back to the breadboarding. Like I've breadboarded a couple things like the LPB3 boost. I've built that a couple times before, and like basic buffers and things like that for utilities and pedals. But I'd like to spend more time breadboarding just to understand how the signal works, what replacing things do, because you can do it much easier on a breadboard than on a PCB to replace stuff. But
Right.
and then I'd also like to learn how to build on like a turret board. I see a lot of fuzzes like Brenna Effects builds really elegant, beautiful
Yeah.
fuzzes for like a tone master, tone bender, or something where it's all, it's like a dozen components on a simple turret board. So I'd
Yeah.
really like to learn how to build that too.
Yeah, there's some turret board stuff that just looks immaculate, like
Yeah, it's so
it's pretty
clean.
crazy. Yeah, it's really fun to look at that stuff. Thinking back on your sort of history now of several years of doing this, whether it be through finishing a PCB or breadboarding or whatever, what are some things that maybe you learned that you can share with people about the process of making pedals, and what might make it easier for them if they want to get into it?
I think just starting with something really simple. There's a ZVEX makes a two knob gain boost. It's like a real simple boost called the Crackle and Fuzz or
Mm-hmm.
something. That there's a clone of that PCB, and it's just a real straight little simple PCB that has like a dozen components on it. And so it's a real great beginner pedal. And so like I've taught my fiance and some friends how to build that,
That's
where
cool.
it's just really simple and basic. You start with like one transistor, a couple caps, a couple resistors, and a diode at the end of it, and you're basically good to go, with a nice little gain box that you can make for yourself. So
That's awesome.
just learning things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Does your fiance play then?
She plays guitar. Yeah, she's a piano player by trade, but she
Yeah,
plays guitar as well, and so she's learned
that is
how
super
to
cool.
solder herself. So
That's awesome. That's really
yeah,
fun to hear. So, hey, you sent me an image of a pedal that you made with a gut shot. Can you tell me a little about that?
yeah, that was a pedal I built for a friend Jeremy out in Georgia.
Mm,
Basically, that's a pedal that has an HM2 Boss HM2 heavy metal for the distortion. In the middle, it has a ZVEX crackle boost for the gain. And then it has a Boss OC2 octaver for sub octave down and octave
crazy.
up.
Okay. And are they all wired serially, or can you turn them on and off as you please? What's the operation of it?
They're all independent, so you can pair them up as you want, and it's
Okay.
just serial routed.
That's cool. Yeah. Super cool looking. It's a lot of work goes into something that has like three circuits like that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm assuming the response for that was pretty good once he had it.
Yeah, he really liked the
Yeah.
pedal. Yeah.
Yeah. Those are some cool circuits. What are you working on now? What's I guess in the future for Lefty Pedals and what you're looking forward to?
I'm still just doing custom pedals for folks. Right now, I'm working on a pedal that's basically a poor man's Crayola box from JHS.
Okay.
They made the original color box that had a transformer in it. And then JHS made a simpler version called the Crayon that was just a one
That's right.
without the transformer. So this is the clone PCB of the Crayola. And then it's going into an EQD tone job for the
Okay.
3-band EQ.
Yeah.
So it'll be together in a larger box.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, EQ is everything sometimes, right? I mean, that can make it
Yeah.
sound like completely different circuits every time you use it. That's cool. So, well, hey, Jambu, thanks so much for taking time to visit and share your story. So, this is another episode of Defining Circuit in the books. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this conversation, stick around. More interviews are on the way where I'll keep exploring all of the things that define why we do what we do. Jambu, thank you. It was an honor having you on the show and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.